I thought my boss was my biggest supporter, until I found out his darkest secret. I used to think my boss was the best thing that ever happened to my career. He mentored me, helped me rise through the ranks, and always had my back, or so I thought. But then I stumbled upon something I was never meant to see. And once I knew the truth, there was no going back. Before we jump into today's video, I need your help. We've noticed the channel is losing some traction, and subscribing is one of the best ways you can support us. It's quick, free, and it helps us keep bringing you awesome content. Your support means the world. Let's keep this channel growing together. Thanks so much. Now let's start the video. When I first started working at this company, I was just another newbie trying to make a name for myself. The corporate world can be brutal, but I was lucky, or at least I thought I was. My boss, Daniel, took me under his wing from day one. He wasn't like the other higher-ups. He actually listened to me, gave me career advice, and even invited me to networking events I had no business being at. For the first time in my life, I felt like I had a real shot at making something of myself. Daniel told me he saw potential in me, that if I worked hard and stayed loyal, I'd be climbing the corporate ladder in no time. And I believed him. But then, small things started feeling off. Documents went missing. Certain projects never got the funding they were supposed to. And somehow, Daniel always had a perfectly crafted excuse. I shrugged it off at first. After all, this guy was my mentor. He wouldn't lie to me, right? Turns out, I was dead wrong. It all started unraveling when I got promoted. I should have been ecstatic. I had worked my ass off for this position. But instead of celebrating, I found myself drowning in an overwhelming feeling that something wasn't right. The first red flag, my predecessor, Mark, had been abruptly fired. No warnings, no goodbyes, just gone. The guy had been at the company for nearly a decade, and one day, he was just erased. I asked around, but nobody had a clear answer. Just whispers about poor performance and internal investigations. Then I inherited his office. It was mostly cleared out, except for a few random folders shoved into a locked drawer. I don't know what made me do it, but I had this weird urge to check them. So one night, after everyone had left, I pried it open with a paperclip. Inside was a stack of documents, financial reports, emails, and something that looked like an internal memo. As I flipped through them, my stomach dropped. There were discrepancies, huge ones. Missing funds, forged signatures, fake vendors receiving massive payments. And at the bottom of every single fraudulent document was the same approving signature, Daniel's. I felt my entire body go cold. The man I trusted more than anyone at this company, hell, the man responsible for my promotion, was involved in something shady. And Mark, maybe he had found out too. Maybe that's why he was fired. I should have walked away, pretended I never saw any of it. But instead, I did something really, really stupid. I decided to dig deeper. That night, I barely slept. My mind was spinning, trying to make sense of what I had just found. If Daniel was involved in fraud, how deep did it go? Was I working for a company built on lies? The next day, I made a risky move. I reached out to Mark. His personal email was disabled, and his company phone was disconnected. But after some digging on LinkedIn, I found his profile. I hesitated before sending him a message. Me, "Hey Mark, I know we've never talked much, but I just got promoted into your old position. I found something strange in the office. Can we talk?" Hours passed with no response. I was about to give up when I got a reply. "Mark, meet me at Joe's Coffee, 8 p.m. Come alone." I didn't know what I expected, but the guy looked wrecked. Mark had dark circles under his eyes, and his hands trembled as he stirred his coffee. He wasted no time. "You shouldn't have contacted me," he said in a hushed voice. "They're watching." I felt my throat tighten. "Who?" He let out a bitter laugh. "Daniel, the board, everyone who has something to lose if this comes out." That's when he told me the truth. The financial fraud I had uncovered was just the tip of the iceberg. Millions of dollars were being funneled into shell companies, and anyone who got too close to the truth was removed. I was about to ask him how he found out when his expression changed. His eyes darted past me, and his face went pale. "Don't turn around," he whispered. "We're being watched." A chill ran down my spine. I fought the urge to look, my hands tightening around my cup. "Listen to me," Mark continued. "You need to act like we never met. Delete our messages, burn any evidence you found, and most importantly," he leaned in, his voice barely audible now, "get out while you still can." I left the cafe in a daze, my heart pounding in my chest. Mark's words echoed in my head, but I wasn't ready to walk away just yet. I needed proof, real proof, and I knew exactly where to find it. I should have listened to Mark. I really should have. But instead, I did the opposite. The next day at work, I acted normal, casual small talk, morning coffee, nodding at Daniel like nothing had changed. But in my head, I was calculating my next move. If millions of dollars were being laundered, there had to be a trail. And where better to look than the company's internal servers? I waited until late evening, pretending I had some extra work to finish. When the office emptied out, I slipped into the finance department. Most of the data was restricted, but as a senior employee, I still had some access. I started digging through the archived files, looking for anything that connected to the documents I found in Mark's drawer. And then I struck gold. Buried under layers of spreadsheets and transaction logs, I found an encrypted folder titled Q4 Projections, Internal Use Only. The moment I clicked on it, a warning popped up. Access restricted. Administrator approval required. Damn it, I wasn't getting in without serious hacking skills. But I did notice something else, an audit log. Someone had accessed this folder recently, and the last login, Daniel's credentials. That's when I heard it. Footsteps, slow, deliberate, getting closer. I panicked, shutting down the screen and pretending to type random nonsense. My heart was in my throat when the footsteps stopped right behind me. A voice, calm, composed, too composed. "You're working late?" I turned around to find Daniel staring at me. His face gave nothing away, but his eyes, cold, calculating. I forced a smile. "Yeah, just catching up on some reports." He nodded slowly. "I see." Then, after a pause, "Let's talk in my office." I knew this wasn't a request. Every nerve in my body screamed at me to run, but I forced myself to follow. I had no choice. Because at that moment, I realized something. Daniel knew, and I had just made myself his next target. Walking into Daniel's office felt like stepping into a trap. The door clicked shut behind me, sealing me in with a man I was starting to realize was far more dangerous than I had ever imagined. He gestured for me to sit. I hesitated for half a second before lowering myself into the leather chair across from his massive oak desk. He sat down slowly, folding his hands together, and just watched me. I forced myself to speak first. "So, what's up?" Daniel let out a small chuckle, shaking his head like I had just told a joke. "You know," he said, leaning forward, "I've been keeping an eye on you." My stomach twisted. "Oh?" He nodded. "I saw potential in you, which is why I gave you Mark's position. But now, I have to wonder." He tilted his head. "Are you really on my team?" I swallowed hard. "Of course. Why wouldn't I be?" He studied me for a long moment, then suddenly smiled, wide and fake. "That's good to hear, because loyalty, it means everything in this business." Then, casually, he unlocked a drawer in his desk and pulled out a single sheet of paper. He slid it across to me. I glanced down and felt my blood turn to ice. It was a resignation letter, with my name on it. Already typed up, dated, and ready to submit. I forced my voice to stay steady. "What is this?" Daniel leaned back, watching me like a predator watches prey. "Just a safety net," he said. "In case you ever feel conflicted about your role here." My hands clenched into fists under the table. This wasn't just a warning. It was a power move. He was letting me know that at any moment, he could make me disappear just like Mark. I had to think fast. I let out a nervous laugh. "Come on, Daniel. I'm not Mark. I don't scare that easily." Something flickered across his face. Amusement? Annoyance? I couldn't tell. Then, slowly, he reached into his desk again. My heart pounded as he pulled out a small flash drive and set it on the table. "Good," he said, "because I have a little project I need you to handle for me." I stared at the flash drive, not daring to reach for it. "What kind of project?" His smile didn't reach his eyes. "Think of it as a test of loyalty." I had no choice. I picked it up, and just like that, I knew. There was no turning back. The weight of the flash drive in my hand felt heavier than it should. I had no idea what was on it, but I knew one thing for certain. Whatever Daniel wanted me to do wasn't legal. I forced a steady breath and met his gaze. "What's on here?" His smile widened. "Instructions. You'll figure it out." That was all he gave me before dismissing me, like I was just another cog in his machine. I left his office, my heart slamming against my ribs. When I got back to my desk, I hesitated before inserting the drive into my laptop. The moment it loaded, a single folder appeared, confidential. I clicked it open, and what I saw made my stomach drop. Documents, spreadsheets, financial reports. But these weren't just any reports. They were cooked. Fraudulent numbers, shell companies, and transactions that screamed money laundering. And at the bottom, a document labeled Transfer Orders. I opened it and scanned the contents. It was a set of banking instructions directing me to move an absurd amount of money to an offshore account. My name was nowhere on the files, but the implication was clear. Daniel wasn't just testing my loyalty, he was making me an accomplice. My hands trembled as I closed the laptop. If I followed through with this, I'd be trapped. If I refused, I had no doubt Daniel would find a way to erase me, just like he did with Mark. I needed advice. That night, I called the only person I could trust, Mark. When he picked up, his voice was quiet, cautious. I was wondering when you'd reach out. I exhaled sharply. Mark, what the hell did you get me into? A bitter laugh came through the receiver. I tried to warn you. I ran a hand through my hair. Daniel just handed me a drive. He wants me to move money for him? Mark sighed. That's how it starts. First it's a small transfer, then a bigger one. Then suddenly you're knee-deep in fraud, and you can't back out. I got out just in time, but he hesitated. They didn't let me leave quietly. I swallowed hard. What do you mean? I mean, Daniel doesn't take betrayal lightly. His voice turned grave. Listen to me. Whatever you do, don't make any transfers. You need to find a way out. Now. My chest tightened. I had suspected as much, but hearing it confirmed made my stomach churn. I leaned against the wall, gripping my phone. How? Mark was silent for a moment. Then, in a whisper, he said, You're going to need proof. Solid proof. And you're going to need a way to disappear before Daniel catches on. I stared at the flash drive on my desk, my pulse hammering. I was in deeper than I ever imagined, and now, I had to figure out how to take Daniel down before he took me down first. I didn't sleep that night. My mind kept spinning, calculating every possible way this could go wrong. If I made a single mistake, Daniel would know. And if he knew, I wouldn't have the luxury of a second chance. By morning, I had a plan. Step 1. Gather evidence. I needed something undeniable, something that would connect Daniel directly to the fraudulent transactions. The flash drive was a start, but I needed more. I spent the next 2 days carefully combing through my company emails, saved files, and even old messages with Daniel. Every time I found something shady, I copied it onto a secure external drive. Step 2. Find an escape route. Quitting wasn't an option, not without consequences. I needed leverage, but I also needed a way to disappear the moment I made my move. That's where Mark came in. We met in person at a diner on the outskirts of town, far away from prying eyes. He looked rough, unshaven, bags under his eyes. I guess being on Daniel's bad side did that to a person. You look like hell, I muttered. Mark gave a dry chuckle. Yeah, well, paranoia does that. He leaned in. What have you got? I slid the drive across the table. Enough to put him away for life. He whistled low. Damn, you work fast. I had to. I exhaled. Now I need to know. How did you get out? Mark's expression darkened. I didn't get out, man. I ran. And even now, I don't feel safe. That didn't exactly inspire confidence. I need a real exit plan, I said. Something solid. Witness protection, FBI, something. Mark hesitated, then pulled out his phone. There's one guy. Used to be with the feds. Now he helps people like us disappear. He scrolled, then turned the screen toward me. A number, no name. This guy legit? Mark nodded. If you're serious about taking Daniel down, this is your best shot. I took a deep breath and saved the number. This was it. The point of no return. That night, I made the call. A gruff voice answered. You got something worth my time? I tightened my grip on the phone. Yeah, I've got evidence on a corporate executive laundering millions. Silence, then. Meet me tomorrow. Noon. Location will be texted. The line went dead. I stared at my phone, my pulse racing. I had set everything in motion. There was no turning back now. The next 24 hours would determine everything. I just hoped I lived to see the other side of it. The next morning, I woke up feeling like I had a target on my back. My meeting with the contact was set for noon, and until then, I had to act normal, like I wasn't about to dismantle the empire of a man who could ruin my life in an instant. I arrived at the location, a nearly abandoned parking garage on the edge of town. My stomach was in knots as I pulled in, scanning the area for anything suspicious. A black SUV was parked near the far corner. As soon as I stepped out of my car, the driver's side door opened, and a tall man in a dark coat got out. He looked ex-military, the kind of guy who had seen things. You the one with the evidence? He asked, his voice calm but firm. I nodded and handed him the drive. It's all there. Fraud, money laundering, fake shell companies, enough to bury Daniel for good. The man plugged the drive into a laptop, scrolling through the files. His expression didn't change, but after a moment, he gave a small nod. This is solid. He closed the laptop. You have a way out? I hesitated. I was hoping you could help with that. He sighed. You're in deep, kid. I can get this to the right people, but once it's out, Daniel will know it came from someone inside. I swallowed hard. I figured. I can offer protection, but you need to move. Now. That's when I noticed the second SUV pulling into the lot. My blood ran cold. I recognized the car. Daniel. Go, the man ordered. Now. I didn't need to be told twice. I sprinted back to my car as the SUV's doors flew open. Daniel stepped out, flanked by two of his goons. He spotted me, and for a second, our eyes locked. His face twisted in fury. Get him! Tires screeched as I threw my car into reverse, narrowly dodging one of his guys as he lunged forward. My heart was hammering as I spun the wheel and floored it out of the parking lot. I didn't look back. I drove for hours, switching roads, taking random turns. My phone buzzed. It was the contact. Lose them? I think so. My hands were still shaking. What now? You lay low. We'll take it from here. A few days later, news broke. Daniel had been arrested. The company was in shambles. The evidence I provided had exposed everything: fraud, embezzlement, threats. I wasn't safe yet, but for the first time in years, I felt free. I had risked everything, and somehow I had made it out. But one thing was for sure: I would never trust another boss like that again. What would you have done in my situation? Let me know in the comments below. And if you enjoyed this story, don't forget to like, subscribe, and hit that notification bell. We've got more crazy stories coming soon, and you won't want to miss them.